Okay, welcome everybody. How are you? And we're making one of my favorite ever dishes, shakshuka. Now, does anyone have an idea where shakshuka comes from? Actually, it's from the Arabic world. Libya, there's a version of it in Turkey, which is actually called menemen, Syria, and actually they have it sometimes in Palestine as well. So it's more of it's Arabic word and actually means something. Shakshuka is the Arabic word for all mixed up. And when you see us making the dish, you'll be able to see what we mean by all mixed up. So it's a bit of this and a bit of that. Now, just before we start, a few things on safety. I don't know if you can see that. SAFETY, and there's some other words next door, and I'll just run you through those. We are going to be doing a bit of chopping for S. The S in safety is for securely holding your knife. So I'm not sure if you've got a couple of knives or one per table and whether you're just going to be taking a turn and passing it around, but I'll show you the proper way to hold the knife. So you want your thumb on the one side here and your fingers wrapped around. So you're not doing this, you're not doing the kind of dinner knife thing. Your fingers are all wrapped around the other side and your thumb is flat here. So you're holding it almost like you're kind of shaking hands, and your hands are on here. When we cut, we obviously use the blade, which is the sharper side. You don't use the blunt side because that won't work. I know that sounds really obvious, but it's worth just saying. So when you hold your knife, you need to hold it like that. Also, whoever has that knife, you need to really pay attention. No walking around with the knives, walking around the classroom. You need to just keep your eyes on it. We'll come to that in a minute. So the A in safety is anchor your chopping board. Now, what do I mean by that? Chopping boards can slide around a lot. So we're going to put either some damp paper towel or a tea towel underneath it, and that stops it from sliding so much. And chefs do this in kitchens all over the world, just to make sure that their chopping boards don't move and they don't slip and hurt themselves. So S for securely hold knife, A for anchor your chopping board, F for fingers rolled back. Now we're going to be doing a lot of chopping and I'll demonstrate as we go along. But in your knife hand, which you're holding the knife correctly like so, your other hand, you need to have your fingers roll back. So we don't want your fingers out like that when you're cutting. We want them to almost be in this bear claw shape. But we'll go into that in more detail when we get to the chopping. So fingers roll back. The E in safety is eyes. Eyes are really important while cooking. So eyes on the knife. So when you are chopping, just make sure that you are looking down on that. You're not chatting away to your friends. You're just focusing on what you're doing. The T, this is an important one. It's not a race. We've got an hour. We've got plenty of time to make this delicious dish. Take your time. So just focus and go at your own speed. Don't feel rushed, because we have got plenty of time to do it. And then the Y, it's a bit of an odd one, yield. What do I mean by yield? So it's yield to a falling knife. If for some reason you dropped your knife on the floor, do not ever, and it's a really good one for home, try and catch it. Just step back out of the way because you don't want to get caught, your fingers caught in the blade. Okay, so it's really simple. So securely hold your knife, anchor your chopping board, fingers roll back, eyes on the knife, take your time, and if a knife did fall, which would be highly unlikely, just yield. So let it step out the way. And if we do all those, we are going to make a fantastically tasty shakshuka. So we need to start chopping to get everything so that we can then mix it up. And we are going to start by doing some spring onions. Now, spring onions are super easy to grow in the garden as well, so hopefully you'll get lots of those this summer. We need to chop off, first of all, the root part here. And you see where you've got the green tops here. The greens have got a bit of flavour, so we don't want to waste too much, but I would cut them maybe about a third of the way down and get rid of that. So before you start, if you have a spare bowl, use that for all your compost bits to go in so that we're keeping it nice and tidy. So on your chopping board, if you're doing the spring onions, let me show you the best way to do it. So chop off quite close to the root end there. We'll chop that off and we'll pop that into our compost bowl if you have a spare bowl. And then cut it about a third of the way down, the green there. and then holding it, so no fingers out. You have to almost form a claw shape with your hands here. Hold the spring onion with your hand that doesn't have the knife, and just bring your hand slightly back. So we want a nice thinnish slice for your spring onions. And we're going to be cooking these first with the peppers, so they can all go into a bowl together. So peppers are a bit of a funny shape, and we are going to be slicing them. We need to take out the seeds, and often people look at them and think, how do I cut that? Well, we're going to do a new chopping technique. This is called, you're holding it in like a bridge. So you put your hands over like a bridge and you're holding it steady, because where possible, you should always try and cut it on the flat side. It just makes it a lot safer, but we'll hold it like this and just cut down through in the middle. So you've made a bridge and you're cutting it in half, and then you've got it lengthways like so. You've got the two halves, and what we can just do is then use your fingers to go in and to take out the middle bit like that, and this top bit here, because that's really chewy, and it doesn't taste very good. And then any seeds that are left in there, you can just tap it on the palm of your hand and the seeds will pop out. So let me show you with the other one. So pull the stem bit there, use your fingers to just pull it out once we've cut it in half. Tap, 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 get the seeds out. And then you've got two halves. So to then cut in slices, you want to cut into the inside of the pepper because it doesn't slip as much as the out. The outside's very shiny and slippery. So cut into the inside like that, and you'll get 4 quarters. And then once we have the quarters, we can hold it to do our bare claw hand and cut in slices like that. So you want finished slices, and just hold it and just remember to move those fingers back as you cut. Let me show you again with another one. So hold it up and do the bridge. So you've got a bridge over it. So you're holding it steady. You're not trying to cut it when it's wobbling all over the place. And cut down lengthways, okay? And then we can pull out, this one's probably easier to see because it's a different color. Pull out the green stem part there, pull that top out. Take out any white pieces inside and the seeds, and just tap it on your hand. We'll do the same with the other half. So the seeds, you can either pull them out or tap them and get those out. And then once you've got your two halves, we can put them down. Again, just cut them in quarters, like so. And then just holding it with a bare claw. So your ends of your fingers are way back. Hold it steady and just slice thinly like that. And you should probably get about 4 or 5 slices out of each quarter, depending on the size. And then we can just put those in with the spring onions because they're going to be cooking at the same time. If you've got a garlic crusher there, you don't need to take off the skin of the garlic. You can just, this is the skin or peel. It's like a papery skin. You don't need to take that off if you have the garlic crusher. So you can just put it in the garlic crusher and just crush it. If you don't have a garlic crusher, you can just do it by chopping it. So I'm just going to chop my garlic up. So you're probably ahead of me if you've got garlic crushers there. But just use all your weight to the force of your hand just to crush that garlic and put that with the spinach. And then when you've done that, you can get your grater and you can grate a little bit of cheese so that we have absolutely everything ready to go. So that when we're cooking, we could just focus on the hob and focus on what we're doing there. So just getting everything prepped and ready. And then the cheese. If you're grating the cheese, just again, be careful. Just watch your fingers, because when you start to get down towards the end of the cheese, you really have to make sure those fingers are back. So just watch when you get to that end. And then we'll put the grated cheese to one side. That will go on once it's cooked. Have any herbs to go on top? If you have coriander, we'll just chop that up. Or you can just use your fingers. I haven't got coriander, I've got some chives. If you didn't have coriander, you could use chives, you could use parsley, you could use basil. You could even use mint if you're growing mint in the garden at school. I'm not sure what you're growing. So with the herbs, you can just chop those if you have some cooking scissors there, or you can just use a knife to chop the herbs as well. So we've just got everything ready to go. They won't go on right until the end because we don't want to lose that flavour. We're obviously going to be cooking with some heat. So we need to be really, really careful of the pan. If you're using a frying pan, you just need, the handle will be fine, but this part is going to be hot. So you need to be really, really careful with that. So you'll need to take all of your ingredients to wherever your hob is. So that would be the peppers, the spring onions, the tomato, the spinach and garlic. And then once it's all cooking, then we will crack the eggs. So we need about 2 dessert spoons of oil in the pan, and it needs to be on a medium heat so that it's not going to burn. So a nice sort of medium heat. Heat the oil first and then just watch the oil. You don't want it like really, really hot. Just watch it and you'll see like teeny weeny, you'll see it kind of shimmering. And then when you see it start to like shimmer a little, then you'll know it's time to add the peppers and the spring onions. And we want to cook them for a good few minutes, probably about 3 or 4 minutes, until they get nice and soft. And then once they start to go soft, then we can add the garlic and spinach and let that cook for another minute, and then the tomato. But the reason we're doing it in this order is because the peppers take a little while to soften. Also, we want to get a bit of flavour out of them as well. If you weren't to cook them, if you just put the tomato sauce in right away with them, you wouldn't be getting any of that lovely flavour out. So you want to cook them, I say, about probably 3 to 4 minutes. Okay, and I think I'm going to add the garlic and spinach now because they're just starting to soften a little, and obviously going to continue to cook, but we're just building sort of layers of flavour. So I've got my garlic in here. I've got my spinach, and you'll see how much that spinach is going to shrink. So look, the pan is nearly overflowing, and I just want the spinach to start wilting a little bit before we add the tomatoes, just to make some space in there as well. The garlic will smell amazing. So once your spinach has shrunk, has wilted, and you've got that good garlicky smell, then you can add your tomatoes. Maybe turn up the heat just a little bit because the tomatoes you're adding are cold. So you've reduced the temperature in the pan there. So turn up the heat maybe 1 when you add the tomatoes, just again to bring it back to a simmer. Should make a little bit of a well in there. So let's make a bit of a well there so there's space for it. And what you'll see with the egg is very quickly the egg white will start going whiter. So I don't know if you can see that there, how the egg white is starting to go white. So we'll put the second one in here. Let me make a little hole for it there. There we go. And then you're not to be stirring it now, because if you're stirring it, you're going to get scrambled egg shakshuka rather than proper egg shakshuka. So the idea is that that egg is going to cook within there. And then pretty much when the white is all done, and the yolk can still be a little runny, it'll be done. But it will take about 7 to 8 minutes to cook properly. But you'll see how it's starting at the bottom where it's hotter. It's gone white already. It's still clear on the top, but that's changing. So we'll just let those eggs simmer in there. Now, if your yolks get split in there, don't worry, because it's all going to be all part of the flavour. It's going to be delicious. And what I'm going to do is just put some of the herbs around it. Just put a little bit of grated cheese over. You could add some yogurt if you have natural yogurt, just a dollop of that. You don't have to. And there I've got a delicious lunch ready for me.